Yeah, I think that they're curious. Yes, but yeah.
But he's not speaking for all of us.
This is me off on my lark here.
Yeah.
All I want to do is project some dystopian view about the field.
Go ahead.
Yeah, please.
And our colleagues in it.
Yeah, I got it. Okay.
But here is, yes, I think that we are curious. And I think that the curiosity is not always as expansive as it could be. And this is what I picked up on what Peter was saying in terms of capacity. I might be curious and go and present a case and go around the table and ask every single one of you for your ideas about what you would do. And then I would take that and I would think about it and I'd figure, does it fit for me? Does it work for me? Could I see myself doing what you all suggested? What I don't often enough see is the curiosity that asks the people who are offering solutions, why does that make sense to you? To give you a very simplistic example, I have been going to professional conferences and mediation conferences now for over 30 years, and I still hear people in the corridors saying, I never go into caucus. I always go into caucus. And I used to get involved in those conversations, and now, unless somebody is willing to say, here is my thinking, here are the set of beliefs I have about my role, about the unique situation of these parties, then I'll talk to them as long as we can stay awake. Because that's what's really interesting to me, is to understand the rationale, not just the decision. So if you, Chuck, have the capacity, the interest, the curiosity to ask those follow-up questions, it is because you are evaluating their answers in line with your own belief system. You're not just saying, everybody wears a three-piece suit, I guess I should be wearing a three-piece suit. Everybody does this, I should do that. And I see too often that people are curious but only up to a limit. And one of the opportunities of a group like this is to move to a different kind of, I will not call it better. I'm not going to try to do that. But a different level or a different type of curiosity. And that is dependent on, and that goes back to Rebecca's question, it goes back to the ability of the person who is asking the questions to be able to be sufficiently reflective herself or himself, and the person who is responding to the questions to also match that in some way or another. Otherwise, the conversation has limits. I think that when we start talking to one another on the basis of why I believe what I believe and how who I am shapes what it is that I do, boy, we have an opportunity to learn some extraordinary things from one another. Those things, what we learn, may not be directly applicable and useful. Just as we read the newspaper all the time and we gather information and so on, some of which, just goes in and out, and that's that, and some we take in and it has an impact on our thinking.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I want to do a time check here because we're at 7 o'clock and our group is supposed to end at 7:30. And we wanted to do a reflective debrief with a case that Chuck has been thinking about. But I also I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to ask a question or have a conversation. If there's
While they're thinking about that, if I can just finish one thing to all three of you who've asked questions so far. The nature of our conversation has been more you're asking a question and my providing an answer. Mm-hmm. If we had a lot of time, and even though we don't know one another, what would be wonderful is for me to ask the person who is asking the question, what is it about that question that so intrigues you? What is it that of all the possible things you could ask about, this one comes to mind? Because it's the same thing when we do a mediation, and then we choose something out of that mediation to reflect on, whether it's ourselves, whether it's in a journal, whether it's in a group. We choose something, and you've each chosen something to ask about, and I've responded. And in the same way, I think it's if we were going to, if I were, particularly if I were there, but we can do that without. If you said to me, so, why? What is it about who you are, what you have learned over the years, what you have struggled with, what you have discarded, as well as what you have adopted, that leads you to say what you just said? We could have that kind of a conversation, and it's just different. It's not. So,
Yeah.
I wanted to really acknowledge that because it does touch on the fundamental, not just, yes, the fundamental elements of the questions that each of the three of you has asked.
Okay. But it's rhetorical, right? You're not asking us that.
Look,
Yeah, 25 minutes.
Yeah, and others happen.
Right.
it isn't necessarily rhetorical, Chuck. This is, I'm here, look, I'm going to take away a huge amount, I already have, from our conversation. But I'm principally here to engage, to be a resource in whatever way makes the best sense to the six of you.
Thank you.
And if you want to follow up in the way that I have at least invited as a possibility, we can do that. And if you would prefer to do a reflective debrief with my observing and maybe jumping in and so on, absolutely. Or anything that makes good sense to all of you.
Okay, so
Wait, just before you start, I have an idea. Tell me what you think, because this is the second time we've postponed Chuck's debrief, and I'm feeling
I've already
particularly
forgotten
guilty
it.
about that. Time is passing, and I don't want to interrupt the flow of this. I think it's so precious to have you here, Michael. I'm so grateful that you're making the time, and I want to stand by offering a debrief, when we have the opportunity. So I'm wondering, Chuck, if we might all agree to do it over the phone via conference call with you. Would that be a possibility in the near future where we'll,
Oh, you mean
all of
in
us-
addition to a regular monthly meeting you're talking about?
Right, where it would be like
It's fine.
45 minutes or something, and
Sure.
we can all listen in and have that time with
Sure.
you, because I feel if we do it now, it's going to be rushed, and it's going to be another.
And we don't have to do mine.